The other thing is, you're looking at, maybe a tenth of the International Space Press Corps right now, so that's not good news either.
That's cool. I suppose I'll talk a bit about my background as well. So originally, I'm from the UK, by the way. I don't know if you caught the accent, but I was in the UK. I got my doctorate in solar physics, actually, in a small town on the west coast of Wales. Lovely place, rains all the time. Had a conference in Maui, randomly. Obviously, I was going to take that opportunity. So I went out to Maui, met my beautiful wife there. This was in 2005. And that just changed my life on many different levels. But the key one, I was going to move to California after a long, painful mess with the immigration guys. That was a lot of fun. But ultimately, I got here and I managed to get picked up by actually Universe Today, run by Fraser Cain out of Canada, and it just really paid for the plane fare. So because ultimately I was a scientist, I didn't have a background in media. I didn't have a job over here. I couldn't get funding. There was no, not even in 2005, 2006, 2007, or well until 2008, there was no funding for a solar physicist. I was thinking, I use blind logic here. I'm going to go to California, the sunny state of California. They're gonna want solar physicists. Evidently not, that didn't happen. So I became a blogger, and it was just one of those things. I had to find a way to survive, and I tried web design. I had my own little independent business going for a while that was, I probably spent more money on it than I actually made. But I found the one thing that I could make money on was blogging, and so I kind of evolved into this weird world of science journalism. Well, not even, I'm not a journalist, so that's wrong. I was science blogging. So I went into science blogging, and I really enjoyed it. I could step out of my field of just the sun. I mean, I was just studying these coronal loops on the surface of the sun for so long. So to be able to write about black holes, to write about the expansion of the universe, to write about amazing things going on in private enterprise, talking about the shuttles, the winding down of the shuttle program, it was all great fun. But then I get a phone call from Fraser Cain one day, and I remember it clearly. And he's very rarely Fraser phones anybody. It's always by email. And he phoned me. I said, "Oh, what's up, Fraser?" And he goes, "Well, the next project I want you to look at, Ian, is we've been having a lot of hits on people writing, on Googling 2012 and Doomsday. Can you just have a look? Because it's kind of weird." This was probably in 2007. I had no idea what he was talking about. So I just did a search online, and instantly YouTube is there with all these wonderful videos about the world exploding. And it was kind of weird. It was captivating as well, because I was thinking, okay, I can do a little bit of investigation here as to what's going on. As it turns out, apparently this ancient culture in Central America, the Mayans, had predicted doomsday, and we're all going to die on the 21st December 2012. So this is the last conference you're going to, by the way. So you may want to, enjoy it, really enjoy it. It's going to be great. Everybody comes to the pub after. And So yeah, I investigated it. I realized there was a lot of hype around this, and for all intents and purposes, NASA had actually come out and said, "We've discovered this planet X, and it's barreling towards the inner solar system." I was thinking, why is this tripe? I mean, really, has NASA issued any such press release? But I found that there's systematic lies, misinformation, disinformation, just pure misunderstanding on these doomsayers' minds. They produce these videos, very scary. And obviously people were paying attention. I didn't understand why. But I started writing some blogs to say why they're so wrong. And I think that was it was actually the first blog that ever got 1 million hits. It was, everybody wanted to know how the world wasn't going to end. And so I started writing a series, and it's turned out to be the most popular series on Universe Today since. And then from that, just using social media, I got to know a guy named Dave Mosher, and he really loved my writings about the end of the world. A friend of mine, I'm a solar physicist. I've got no right to be talking about the ancient Mayans and why they didn't actually predict doomsday. But for some reason, it really took hold, and Dave Mosher really liked my stuff. And he said, And I just think that social media is fantastic for getting the word out there about good science, but it also, the doomsayers and the tabloid press will use that to their advantage to get hits and to ultimately make money. So I just think that's how I kind of evolved from a science background to suddenly doomsday killer. I mean, I don't know how else to explain it. But yeah, really, I mean, that's our backgrounds. I mean, I know, Alan, you wanted to speak a little bit about social media and...
Well, I'm sure the questions you have are probably a lot more interesting than anything I have to say. And just one little note that we're coming up on the Curiosity mission, and I do think that social media, whether it's Twitter or Facebook or blogs or whatever, has raised the awareness of people about space missions, even though your desk person at the hotel wasn't aware of it. I do think that a lot of people are plugged into it because of what they're seeing on Twitter, and NASA is doing a lot more over the past couple of years on that. In fact, the Phoenix Mars lander broke some news about discovery of water ice on Mars close up through the personification of the probe itself on Twitter. And they're doing that again for Mars Curiosity. And so if you look at the Twitter account, you'll see that Mars Curiosity is already tweeting up a storm thanks to some of the folks at JPL. I guess there are 3 women who, like Veronica McGregor and a couple of other women, who call themselves the Hive Mind. And so, so the Hive Mind is active, and we have that to thank for finding out where Mars Curiosity's head is at this weekend. So that's all I wanted to say, is that there are some interesting opportunities for raising awareness through these unconventional, or what seem to be unconventional, means.
Yeah, just a quick addition to that, I did an interview with on the Warren Olney show, like yesterday, NPR show, and I found myself referring to past missions by NASA as my mission, and I kind of owned it. And Warren said to me, "Oh, Ian, so you worked on the Phoenix mission?" And I went, "Oh, no, I didn't work on it." He goes, "Well, you kept on referring to as your mission." I said, "Well, I suppose that's how NASA's used social media to such a great degree now that you actually feel some ownership of these missions. So I hope they do the same with Curiosity. So far, so good." So if any questions for us? Oh, not this front row. I told you.
An easy one.
Go for it.
Okay. This morning, Dr. Zubrin characterized the leadership of NASA as feckless. I'm curious, in your perception as journalists and observers of NASA, how many instances, if any, do you feel that you have seen fecklessness exhibited by the NASA leadership?
Yeah, so the question was, do we see the fecklessness of NASA leadership? I mean, what's our views on that?
What do you feel about that? Is that
What,
accurate?
can you define fecklessness?
As your dictionary Google will define it, it is the tendency to dream up reasons not to do a thing because you don't want to do a thing, even though you could do a thing. Mars, new rocket, whatever topic. Does NASA really exhibit fecklessness in your perception?
I think, I mean, this has been said since the end of the Apollo era, that if things had gone differently, we would be on the moon and we would be heading to Mars by this time. And it really comes down to national will, it comes down to budget. So I think that NASA has been having a hard time because they come up with these aspirations, and then it's never matched by the budget. That came out from the Augustine panel. And so I think that's what makes them look feckless is that they come up with a vision and don't get the backing for that vision, in part because there's not the national will to do that, and so they fall short, and then here comes another vision. Let's not do Constellation, let's do Orion and SLS and go to an asteroid, and who knows what's going to happen when another administration comes in. So they've got DARPA, which is not, it doesn't strike me as a feckless agency. DARPA is coming in with this idea of the 100-year starship, and really the point is, how do you organize something that survives the next election cycle? How do you organize something that is really a long-term effort? And I think that's what the push to space exploration and settlement is a multi-generational effort. NASA has not been very good at that, and I think there are a lot of reasons for it, and that's why Bob could make the case that it's willfully feckless. I don't think it's willfully feckless, just accidentally feckless.
I actually think he's right. I've covered NASA since 1975, one way or another, and I've seen there's two NASAs, and what he's talking about, I hope, is the politicians. And if you go to the 9th floor of NASA headquarters, that's feckless. I mean, it just is. And it's more so now than it was 10 years ago or 20 years ago. But if you go down to the 8th floor or the 7th floor, where the career people who are not politicians, they're civil servants and they're taking advantage of their tenure, so to speak, there are a lot of really good people starting at headquarters and going, certainly up here at JPL and all over the country, who, frankly, I don't see how they stand it. But so, yeah, I agree with Subrin about that one.
I'd like to, can you hear me?
Yeah.
I'd like to follow up on this because Dr. Zubrin had a conference in Washington in November to talk about the budget, and inspired me to do a study for the American Enterprise Institute. I went back, spent quite a bit of time, and I went back and looked at various space projects that had been proposed over the last 30 years. Everything from, Mars Direct, Constellation, all those different projects, and looked at proposed budgets. And then I compared them to the federal budget. And what is really stunning is how little money we're talking about to get any of these things that are, even the first President Bush's, Battlestar Galactica proposal was trivial compared to not just what the government spends, but what the government wastes. And I think the American people are still in love with the space program because every time the shuttle goes up, or they're already talking about Curiosity on television this weekend. I think the American people have a great affection for the space program. I think they like the space program. So my question to you is, when a policy, and change of administrations is a big deal. First President Bush proposes something, Clinton comes in, he wants to do something different because it's not his project. But my question is, when a project is canned, it's usually because, we can't spend the money on this. And you never hear a journalist say, it's 0.05% of the people who should know. People complain a lot about journalistic bias, but I think sometimes journalistic bias is a good idea if it's shedding some light on something that somebody has said. And you never hear any reports of the space program, the space budget, where journalists are saying, this is trivial, guys. Why are you doing this? I mean, they wouldn't say it that way. That perspective never comes into it. It's always, politician says it's too expensive, and let's take it for granted. Sorry, I took too long.
And just to follow up on that, most American people think that the space program's budget is 20% of the total budget, not 0.6%. And I say, make the budget what people think it is.
We agree. Even if it's just 1%, Imagine what they can do with that.
Yeah, I hope that we do report on that, you know,
Yeah.
to give a realistic view. And I do try, whenever the issue of money comes up, as it has with, for example, the commercial crew program compared to the Orion SLS
And I think just making simple comparisons. One of my biggest articles I ever did on NASA was the comparison with how much NASA gets and how much the US spends on pizza in a year. And I think the pizza budget was double that of NASA's. And when people put it like that, they suddenly realize, well, I can do without pizza for a year.
Not me.
Yeah, just one slice.
Okay,
Just
all right,
one slice
all
for
right,
NASA.
one slice.
Yeah. Yeah, the military budget.